What's up everybody, I'm Derek, this is Rockin' eForge, and lately I've been letting my green thumb kind of run my life, so to speak. I recently have built up and started to plant a small garden in my front lawn. Don't worry, I don't have an HOA to worry about, otherwise they probably would have gotten after me about blacksmithing anyway. And to marry my two hobbies together, I thought it'd be kind of fun to make a kind of decorative garden trowel. So, let's get rockin'. Now, unlike most of my projects, I am starting out without really any major idea on how I'm planning to do this. I know I've got a piece of sheet metal lying around that I'm going to use for the spade of the trowel, so while the forge heats up, I'm going to be cutting that out, and then I'll be putting a piece of 3/8" square stock in the fire to start working on the handle. And what I'm going to do with the handle is I've got this pre-center punched, and I'm just going to punch a couple holes in the end here. I've got to recenter that. Because this will set us up for actually riveting the spade onto the handle itself. All right, so that gets us 2 holes punched. Not very well centered on both sides, but we can correct that using our round drift. So we're gonna go through that here in just a second. All right, so as I drift this, I've cooled off one side of the hole a little bit more. And that was successful in shifting that hole a little bit closer to center. We'll do the same thing on the other hole as well. It's not perfect, but it shifted a little closer to center. I'll do the same thing with the other hole, and then we will move on to work on the spade. All right, so both of these holes are now punched. Again, not perfect, but pretty close to centered. I'm gonna touch mark here in the middle, and then we'll work on joining this to the actual spade that I cut out earlier. And what I'm going to do in order to join this to the spade is cut down the middle on my bandsaw of the portion that's going to go around the actual sheet metal, and we'll split that out and then wrap it around the sheet metal and rivet everything together in order to have a nice solid connection. And I'm going to do some touch-ups on the shape of the end of the bar here just to refine the look before we actually spread it out and rivet everything together. And I'm just eyeballing the center of each of these holes with the center line that I had sketched out on the sheet metal. And I'm just gonna pop a little dot at the center of each. And then I'll go ahead and center punch these and then drill them with a 1/4" bit and then fit and rivet everything together. All right, so with these holes drilled, this should fit nicely together. And the rivets, once they've expanded in those holes, will actually make a really nice connecting point that'll ideally keep this from wiggling too awful much, but this little bit of wiggle won't actually affect the actual operation of the trowel. I'm going to use my plate here, my rivet heading plate. To keep things round on that first rivet, and then we'll go ahead and toss this back in the fire because as you can see, I've got a little bit of an uplifting. Oh, that seems to be okay. All right, so, and then we'll swap sides and get the other rivet. And as I said previously, the flaring of the bottoms of those rivets will help seat everything together and spread to fill that hole and reduce the amount of wiggle that the actual spade has in the trowel. All right, so now I'm going to be a little bit industrious, and I'm going to try to use this swedge block, if I can figure out how to line it up. to give myself a bit of a ridge down the center line of my trowel toward the, I don't know, digging face. This might be easier said than done. And I'm trying to just line the tip up in that swedge so that I can just kind of work that all the way down in a line. This might look better in my head than in real life. I think I'm gonna abandon that concept, so we're gonna stick this back in the fire and flatten that back out. As much as I think that it'd look really cool, I don't have the right tools to make it work. So we're gonna move back to my original plan, which you'll see in just a moment. All right, so my plan is to simply use the crossbeam hammer to give the spade a bit of texture. The intent will be to have this look somewhat leaf-like with kind of veins of the leaf going out from the center, and that'll be all. And before I get too far into this, I'm going to put a twist in the stem, so to speak, of the trowel. We'll just do a half twist there. All right, then I'm going to use my stump and a half an axe handle in order to add a kind of S-bend up to where the handle is going to be. I actually like the way that turned out quite a bit. And then I'm going to use the flat surface here and the axe handle to just make sure it's all straight and in line. And then we'll move on to actually shaping the spade itself before I cut this off and start working on the handle. And the way that I'm actually going to do this is to simply lay this flat on the anvil and then rotate it and use my crossbeam to just continue texturing as I kind of rotate in the direction that I want the steel to go. We'll do the same thing on the other side, which is easier said than done. This is radiating a lot of heat. Didn't end up very even. I'll have to work on this corner. But what I'm effectively doing is laying the part of the spade that I want to fold on the anvil and striking off the anvil to force it to bend or fold until I'm satisfied with the shape. Gonna look a little silly. The spade might be a bit big too. In order to adjust, if you want to bring this back further out, all you have to do is use the crossbeam and forge on, well, lightly hammer on the edge to kind of flatten that out. For the handle, I'm going to do something I think pretty creative, and to do that, I'm gonna just measure about a hand width from where that S-bend stops and just cut this off, and we'll start actually working on the handle here shortly. And in order to forge this handle, I'm going to flatten a good portion of this on the flat face of the anvil, and I'm going to lay this over the edge of the anvil and spread it using the rounding face of my rounding hammer. And I'm going to establish a shoulder there that I'm going to maintain, and I'll show you why later on when I actually affix a handle. All right, so I flattened this out, and next I'm going to cool this down and then affix a piece of wood on the back side of this so that it's metal on top and wooden handle on the bottom, and then pin it and glue it all together like a knife handle, or at least one side of a knife handle. And I think that'll make this trowel look quite nice. And it's become very apparent that the handle of this thing is way too long And the scale, I might have went a little crazy with the scale on this spade, but I'm gonna cut this off at just over about a hand width long. And then I'm going to take it to the belt grinder and grind this surface in preparation for epoxy. I'm just gonna use some quick cure epoxy here. I'm gonna mix this up, if I can find a popsicle stick or something. Gloved up. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'll drill later and epoxy in some pins just to make sure we've got a solid fit up, and then we'll move on to shaping the actual handle and be pretty well finished up. All right, so I've got this pre-center punched. Everything's dry now, so I'm going to just line this up, and then drill 3 holes in the handle so I can pin this and make sure that I've got a solid connection. And then I'm gonna mix my 5-minute epoxy again. And then I'll go ahead and cut the excess off and then move to the grinder to start shaping the handle. All right, so I took the time to shape the handle on the belt grinder, and then I hit it with a 120 grit sandpaper just to smooth out the edges and stuff I got on the grinder and bring it down to this kind of dull color. I'm gonna leave this out in the sun for a while, and that should change the color of the Purple Heart because it's a nice oily wood back to a deep dark purple, really pretty color. I love Purple Heart for that reason. But that is going to do it for this garden trowel and today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you want to support me in the channel further, please consider becoming an honorary striker on my Patreon. That link is in the description below the video, or please consider becoming a member on my YouTube channel. And as always, keep on rocking.